Shocking redemption, homeless girl saves dying billionaire, you 1T believe his epic reward. The rain beat down like a drum on the cracked pavement of West Monroe Avenue, where life splashed its own brand of chaos. Lila, a scruffy girl of 18, wandered the streets shrouded in shadows. Her tattered coat flapped around her like a ghostly flag, damp and worn but holding stories only she could tell. No one knew the pain etched into her features or the shivering dreams hiding in her heart. And yet, on this dreary night, destiny had other plans. In the glare of traffic lights, a luxury car came screeching, its engine rumbling like a beast. The sleek black beast was out of place, roaring in contrast to the lifeless storefronts around. With a swift jolt, the vehicle halted. It was the kind of car that whispered power and prestige, a billionaire's toy. Its owner, Malcolm Drake, was a living legend on Wall Street, notorious for his ruthless tactics and sky-high empire. That night, however, he was just a man. You could practically smell the fate whispering in the air around him, but something wasn't right. His face was pallid, a gray pallor that suggested more than just a rough day of trading. He staggered out of the car, clutching at his chest, eyes wide with terror. The world around him blurred, and panic erupted from his lips like a rapid-fire gunshot. "Help! Someone, please!" Lila squinted as she caught the unfolding drama. She felt her heart thump like a wild drumbeat in her chest. Was this a moment to ignore, to slip away unnoticed, or was it something larger, something she couldn't dismiss? Uncertainty churned in her stomach, but she could no longer question her fate. She stepped forward, a blend of fear and care rushing through her veins. "Stay with me, sir," she shouted, kneeling beside Malcolm. As she touched his clammy hand, she felt a surge of warmth flood her body, a strange connection that sent chills through her spine. A mysterious glow surrounded them, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. "You're going to be okay, just breathe." Malcolm's breaths were sharp, frantic. People around them began to murmur, their expressions a mix of disbelief and morbid curiosity. A bodyguard dialed emergency services, his face mirroring shock and confusion. Was it possible that a homeless girl could somehow save this titan of industry? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Lila felt the tremors in Malcolm's hand soften as she held it. The crowd gasped collectively, eyes darting between her ragged form and the billionaire's plight. Would she be his savior, or would destiny seal their fates? The sirens wailed from afar, drawing closer, and tension elevated like a live wire. In a moment that felt like an eternity, Lila caught a flash of something in Malcolm's gaze, a flicker of recognition. A fleeting glimpse of respect. It blazed deep within her soul, igniting a hope she barely dared to breathe. And just like that, the world shifted around them, the imminent arrival of paramedics, the curious murmurs of the crowd, and a suspenseful air that wound tighter with every passing second. But what would happen next? What awaited Lila and Malcolm when fate wove its unforgiving threads together? Lila's heart raced like a runaway train as the wail of sirens grew louder. The rain continued to pour, each drop hammering against the pavement, but she couldn't tear her gaze away from Malcolm. The flicker of awareness in his eyes had transformed the chaos around her into a single point of focus. As the paramedics arrived in a flurry of red and white, she felt a sudden rush of panic. What if they couldn't save him? The medics leaped from the ambulance, their faces stoic, a flurry of movement as they rolled a stretcher closer. Lila squeezed Malcolm's hand tighter, a desperate plea for him to hold on, to fight like she had for every breath in her life. "You're not done yet. You have to hang in there," she shouted, her voice cracking against the clamor of the crowd. One of the paramedics knelt beside them, assessing Malcolm. "What happened?" he asked sharply, and Lila felt the weight of his gaze. She hesitated for a fleeting moment, as if her words could tip the scales of fate. He just collapsed," she stammered, trying to keep it together, knowing that every second counted. "I think it's his heart. Get him on the stretcher," barked the medic, urgency slicing through the air like a serrated blade. They carefully lifted Malcolm, his body limp and unresponsive as he was maneuvered onto the stretcher. Lila stood back, her breath hitching in her throat as fear wrapped itself around her heart, squeezing painfully. The medics began their work, placing monitors on Malcolm's chest and trying to revive him. "Come on, buddy, stay with us," one shouted, slapping his hands against Malcolm's shoulder. The crowd was almost silent now, their collective breath held in anticipation. With a shuddering gasp, Malcolm's eyes fluttered open again. They darted from the paramedics to Lila, and in that split second, the city around them vanished. It was just them. She could see the confusion, fear, and something deeper, as if he recognized her, as if she meant something more to him. Just when she thought he might speak, his eyes rolled back, and the world tipped into chaos again. The medics pumped his chest, the sound of their desperation echoing through the night air. Lila could only watch, helplessness flooding through her body like ice. Would he really die before her eyes? Then, as if in answer to her silent prayer, Malcolm coughed violently. The medics paused, attention snapping back to him. "He's coming around, hold on," one yelled, while another continued to check vitals. Seconds stretched into lifetimes. Overwhelmed, Lila stumbled back, her knees nearly buckling under the weight of what was happening. Their eyes met again, and Malcolm whispered shakily, "Why?" "Because you have to fight. You can't leave me," Lila blurted out. It wasn't just his life at stake, part of her needed him to pull through, too. The paramedics loaded him into the back of the ambulance. "You'll follow us, right?" one asked Lila, concern etched into his features. But before she could respond, Malcolm met her gaze one last time. His eyes reflected a mix of fear and gratitude. Suddenly, just as she was about to answer, the scene erupted, an explosion behind her. Glass shattered and screams filled the air as chaos erupted like a volcano from the depths of the earth. Lila barely had time to think, instinct took over as she dove behind the ambulance, heart pounding wildly in her chest. What had just happened? The urgency was gone, replaced by confusion and danger. The moment of salvation had turned into a nightmare. As she peered around the corner of the ambulance, smoke curled in the air, thickening the tension. She had saved him once, but now, a new threat loomed over them. Would she be able to save him again? The question hung in the air like a storm cloud. Without thinking, Lila pushed through the crowd, determination growing like wildfire in her chest. What came next would change everything. The air was electric with panic. Lila's heart raced again, but this time it was fear, raw and choking. Adrenaline pulsed through her as she darted forward, merging with the throng of bodies scrambling for safety. The sound of another explosion echoed, sending shockwaves through the crowd. "Get down! Get away!" Voices screamed around her, a cacophony of panic blending into one horrifying symphony. She pressed against the slick metal of the ambulance, bracing herself against the chaos. The smoke stung her eyes, a reminder that danger lurked all around. But Malcolm, he was in there, fighting for his life. Lila stole a glance back at the ambulance, the dim light still flickering from within. Would the medics be able to keep him alive with the world crumbling around them? As her mind raced, she felt someone grab her arm. It was a stranger, a woman with wild eyes. "You need to leave. Now." Lila shook her head fiercely. "No. I can't. I can't leave him." There was no way she would abandon Malcolm, no matter the risk. "Think, girl." The woman yelled, her voice cutting through the noise. There are people trapped. You'll get yourself killed. The desperation in the woman's voice pierced through Lila's resolve, but all she could see was Malcolm's face, the fear, the gratitude. She couldn't just run away while he fought for every heartbeat. Suddenly, the metallic hiss of the ambulance doors swinging open broke through the shouts and panic. A paramedic stumbled out, his uniform tattered, face smeared with ash and fear. "We're evacuating," he yelled, urgency flooding his voice. "Is there anyone?" Malcolm's voice rang out, faint but unmistakable. "Lias?" Her body surged forward, ignoring the rising cries of the crowd behind her. "I'm here. I'm right here." She couldn't leave him now, couldn't let him die alone. As she pushed closer, a fearsome blast sent a fresh wave of debris flying. Lias hit the ground, her body instinctively curling in on itself. The air turned dark, filled with dust and smoke, a choking fog that hung heavily in her lungs. "Malcolm! Malcolm!" she called, voice hoarse and trembling. "Lias!" His voice was stronger now, filled with a raw determination that ignited a fire in her chest. She clawed her way back to her feet, grit and resolve hardening inside her. With every step, Lias fought against the crowd, a relentless tide of fear carrying her away from what truly mattered. She was almost there when she felt the ground tremble beneath her feet, another explosion rocking the world around them. "Hold on!" she shouted into the haze, rushing through shifting shadows. The closer she got, the more she could hear the commotion from inside. The paramedics were shouting back and forth, words like blood loss and stable blending into unintelligible fear. Then Malcolm's eyes found hers, wide with fear. For a heartbeat, everything fell away, a world reduced to just them. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered, despair and hope intermingling in her chest. But as she stood at the threshold, the paramedic reached out, urgency clouding the air. "Back! You can't come in here." But just then, another explosion rocked the street, even more chaotic than before. Everything crumbled around them, and Lias felt herself being pushed backward. Her heart dropped. Were they really going to lose him? "No!" she screamed, desperation flooding her voice. She fought to break free, but a blinding flash disrupted her thoughts. Darkness flooded her vision, drowning out the noise, the cries, the fear. When she blinked back into consciousness, rubble and smoke surrounded her, confusion clouding her mind. Where was he? As her heart raced, she grasped her head, feeling the weight of uncertainty. All that was left was the silence echoing in the destruction, and the dry taste of fear in her mouth. She needed to find Malcolm. She had to. But where would she even begin? The smoke swirled and danced around her, as shouts faded into whispers. What if she was too late? Somewhere in the wreckage, she heard a muffled cry. A flicker of movement. Hope ignited inside her again. But with Malcolm's life teetering on the edge, would she be able to find him in time, or would the chaos swallow them both? Lila staggered to her feet, confusion mixing with desperation as she shook off the last remnants of unconsciousness. The air hung heavy with ash, mixing the scent of smoke and something metallic she couldn't quite place. Her heart thudded in her chest, each beat a reminder of the urgency clawing at her gut. "Malcolm!" she shouted again, the sound echoing eerily off the debris. The silence answered her, heavy and oppressive. Every instinct screamed for her to keep moving, to shove past the rubble and reach him, yet the darkness of uncertainty loomed. She squinted through the haze, trying to make sense of the scattered forms around her. Were they bodies? Was there anyone alive? The muffled cries persisted, urging her on. Adrenaline surged again, pushing her forward into the wreckage, her hands brushing against shattered concrete, shards that sliced through her skin. "Lias!" A pained whisper drifted toward her. It was Malcolm. Her heart soared and plummeted all at once, fueling her frantic search. She felt her way through the chaos, fingers trembling as she brushed against a tangle of wires and twisted metal. "I'm coming!" Just hold on. Amidst the oppressive silence, a flicker of hope sliced through. Lila clawed her way across the debris, each movement strained and sluggish, but she couldn't afford to stop now. The sound of crying grew louder, frantic and heart-wrenching, pushing her onward. As she ducked under a snapped beam, she spotted him. Malcolm lay half-buried under a pile of rubble, his face ashen, eyes squeezed shut in pain. Relief flooded her, yet panic thumped against her chest. She rushed to his side, dropping to her knees, gasping at the sight of him. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead. "Lila, don't!" he croaked, sensing her presence though barely able to speak. "Stay back. Shut up. You're going to be fine." Her voice cracked under the weight of emotion. She reached for him, pushing aside twisted metal and crumbling bricks. Fear coiled around her throat like a vice, but she refused to falter. "Help!" His voice diminished, his eyes flickering as he struggled to stay conscious. She found a sturdy piece of debris and braced it against the wreckage, creating a makeshift shield. "I'm here. Just breathe, please. Is anyone else?" he mumbled, eyes drifting. "No. It's just us," she said, choking back tears. She brushed her fingers against his forehead, steadying him. "I want to let you go. Just focus on me." A piercing shriek echoed through the chaos. The building, was it going to collapse? She felt a rush of panic. "We have to move. You need to get out of here." I can't." His breathing was shallow, and the light in his eyes flickered dangerously. With fierce determination, Lila gathered her strength. "You can. We're getting out of this." She gripped him under one arm, lifting him slightly. "On three, Malcolm. 1, 2." But before she could push him, there was a rumbling sound, ominous and warning. A shift in the ground, followed by a creaking noise that sent chills skittering down her spine. She hesitated, fear teetering on the edge of control. "Lila, now." His voice was weak, but the urgency ignited a fire in her. She squared her shoulders, took a deep breath, and pulled him toward her, desperate to free him. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and the sound of settling concrete filled the air, drowning out everything else. She felt the world tilt, pieces of the structure collapsing into the abyss. Time slowed, seconds stretched like hours as terror clawed at her throat. "No!" she screamed, pulling him closer as she felt the rush of dust and debris whirling around them, and then, just as suddenly, a loud crack followed by silence. The weight of the building shifted dramatically, and Lila felt herself slipping. She looked down at Malcolm, whose eyes widened with panic. Lila. Then darkness descended once more. The world around her blurred, the air thick with uncertainty. Had they escaped? Or had the chaos finally consumed them both? As she hovered between consciousness and despair, a thought broke through, a whisper of clarity in the chaos. Was anyone coming for them? But before she could grasp it, a shadow loomed, obscuring everything, and the weight of fear clamped down once more. What lay ahead? Would the forces beyond the wreckage prove to be a savior or a final end? Lila fought through the darkness, feeling the thick haze pressing down on her. The shadows swirled, but then light. A flicker emerged, a distant glow that broke through the chaos. She clung to it desperately, her mind racing. "Malcolm!" she called, her voice hoarse, rasping against the heaviness of the air. She could feel the warmth of his body beneath her arm, though the weight of rubble constricted them both like a vice. His breath was shallow, nothing but a fading whisper. Lila's his voice barely reached her ears, but it was enough to snap her focus. I can't breathe." Panic surged through her like fire. She pressed her palm against his chest, feeling the rapid thudding of his heart beneath her fingers, a heartbeat she refused to let fade into silence. "Just hold on, Malcolm. Help is coming." But the glow drifted further away, the tendrils of darkness tangling around her like ice. As if sensing her fear, the sound of rubble shifting returned, sending a shudder through her. She couldn't lose him now. Not when they were so close. Summoning what strength she had left, Lila pushed against the debris above them, every muscle in her body protesting. The ground trembled again, and a fresh wave of dust enveloped them. "I need you to help me," she urged, using her elbows to shove forward. "Can you lift your legs? Try." His breath hitched, a small moan escaping his lips. "I don't think no. You have to." Each word was a thread pulling him back, igniting a spark of fight. She pushed harder, her vision tunneling around the weak light ahead. On 3, 1, 2, 3. With a collective grunt, Lila heaved, and for a moment, she felt him shift. His leg moved, pushing against the debris. She gasped with relief, the weight above them cracking just enough to create a sliver of space. "Yes. Keep going." But another rumble echoed, a low growl from deep within the earth, and sudden darkness engulfed them again. The building shifted, as if holding its breath. Lila felt the ground pull away beneath her knees, and a sickening dread flooded her. "Hold on to me, Malcolm. I'm slipping." He cried out, panic dripping from his voice. She quickly wrapped an arm around his waist, anchoring him to her as she dug her fingers into the cracked earth. "Just hold tight." A howl of wind whipped through the debris, dragging at them and sending bits of concrete cascading down, a storm in a cage. With every ounce of willpower, she clung tighter, feeling his body shaking under her grip. Then, as if the universe conspired against them, a jarring metal scrape pierced the air, followed by a loud crash nearby. The hairs on her arms stood on end. "We have to get out now." She could almost taste the panic, sharp and metallic. "Make noise. Call for help. Help. Someone." Malcolm's voice broke through the disarray, raw and desperate. Lila joined him, their voices weaving into an urgent harmony. "Help us." The darkness inched closer, the weight of debris a constant reminder of their mortality. With renewed fervor, Lila pushed her fear aside, fixating on the moment they were still alive, still fighting. Suddenly, the light flickered again, broadening, no longer distant. Was it just her mind playing tricks, or was someone really there? She squinted through the haze to catch a glimpse, her heart racing. A shape darted into view, a figure silhouetted against the glow. Lila could have laughed in disbelief, until the trembling stopped. They were not alone. "Hold on." The figure called out, rushing toward them, eyes wide with shock. Hope surged within her, but with it came an all-consuming dread. Who was coming? More rescuer or more chaos? As the figure moved closer, Lila felt Malcolm's grip loosen, his energy wavering. "Stay with me, Malcolm. Stay." She pleaded, pushing panic down as the figure drew near, but she could see it then. The danger wasn't done with them yet. With the glimmer of a chance ahead, uncertainty sliced through Lila. What would they find in the light? Was this the help they desperately sought, or a new level of terror? The ground trembled again beneath them. Time was slipping away. Would salvation come, or would it drag them deeper into the abyss? The figure drew closer, the glow illuminating the contours of a face twisted in concern. Lila could see the flash of intent in the stranger's eyes, but along with that spark of hope came an uncomfortable doubt. Was this person really here to help? "Where are you hurt?" The stranger shouted, urgency veiling their voice. "Just trapped. Under the rubble." Lila gasped, desperation tightening her throat. She felt Malcolm go limp against her as the figure skidded to a stop, scanning the debris. "Stay still. I'll get you out," the stranger yelled. Sweat dripped down their temple, glistening in the fragile light. They stumbled forward, arms outstretched, probing the wreckage. Lila's heart thudded in her chest. "We need air," she croaked, pressing her palm against her own throat. He can't breathe." The stranger's eyes flicked to Malcolm, and they froze for a second before their focus sharpened. "Help me. We need to clear this." Together, They began to shift the brittle concrete as Lila kept her grip on Malcolm, her heart pounding with the rhythm of their frantic movements. Each rock they pushed aside felt monumental, every inch gained a tiny victory against the death that loomed over them. But just as they cleared enough space for air to flow through, a loud crack echoed above them. "Look out!" Lila screamed, freezing in place as she watched a falling beam cascade down a blackened sky in motion, threatening to seal them away forever. "Get back!" The stranger hollered, throwing themselves over Malcolm and Lila as shards of concrete rained down. The impact rattled Lila's bones, the air filled with choking dust and debris. She felt their protector's weight pressed over her, and a rush of gratitude poured through her. But then she felt the shiver of panic. What if they'd taken the brunt of the blow? With trembling fingers, she felt for the person above them. They groaned, the sound thick with pain. "I'm okay, just a little," their voice trailed off, followed by a labored breath. "No. We have to get out," Lila cried, fear clawing at her gut. With a surge of strength, she shoved the stranger off her, half dragging, half pulling them to the side. "Can you move?" "Barely," they rasped. "But we can't quit now." The darkness felt heavier. Malcolm's breath was a whisper of wind, and Lila's mind churned, desperate to think of a way to break free. Light shimmered again, a promise hiding beneath the rubble. "I see it. Just a little more." They pushed together, rocks tumbling away as despair and hope fought tooth and nail. But then the floor beneath them shook with a jarring intensity, sending Lila tumbling backwards. The wall beside them crumbled, collapsing like a dam breaking free. "Lila." Malcolm's voice was a frayed rope, pulling her back from the edge. As she clawed her way back to him, she could feel the pulse of chaos ramping back up. With awareness came an icy dread. The figure beside her struggled to regain their footing, but the ground quaked again. "We need to go," they yelled. "Hold on, Malcolm. Hold on." Lila cradled his head, her fingers slick with blood and dirt. She couldn't let him slip away. "Please." Before she could react, the stranger lunged forward again, forcing rocks aside and shouting for help with newfound energy. "We can make it." With a final push, lights flared above them, forces from above were coming to pry them out of their tomb. Voices shouted urgent, frantic, tearing at the dark. But as the dawn broke through the sky, the shadows loomed larger, holding secrets still buried. Lila squeezed Malcolm's hand, their fragile connection holding tight against the storm. Just what was waiting for them beyond the light? Would this be their escape or a door to horrors unseen? As they gasped for breath, Lila could only wonder, what else lurked in the ruins? Who would emerge from those shadows when all seemed lost? The beam finally broke free, scattering dust motes into a swirling dance as light flooded in. Lila shielded her eyes, squinting against the sudden brightness. The moment stretched impossibly as she felt the ground beneath them tremble softly, the sound of clanging metal and distant sirens announcing a world ready to intervene. "Stay with me, Malcolm. Just a little longer," Lila begged, her voice breaking. She could see the worry in the stranger's eyes as they turned back to them, a fierce determination flaring within. "Help is coming. I can hear them," the figure shouted, their voice echoing above the din. They knelt beside Malcolm, pushing aside rubble to reveal Malcolm's hazel eyes, dulled now but still fighting for a flicker of life. Lila felt the surge of anxiety claw at her throat again. "He needs air. Please." She could barely manage a whisper. The stranger's hands worked quickly to clear away the last of the debris with urgency like a sudden storm, every movement deliberate and sharp, but as the remaining pieces crumbled away, Lila felt cold dread wrapping around her heart. "We have to hurry. Now." She could barely hear her own voice, all she focused on was the rise and fall of Malcolm's chest, slower and slower. Finally, gasps of air fresh and invigorating filled her lungs as the shadows receded. She pushed onwards, adrenaline surging through her veins, hoping against reason that they would find some semblance of safety. Malcolm! Open your eyes. Come on. With one last tug, they pulled Malcolm free. The stranger kept a grip on him as Lila scrambled to her knees, frantically calling his name. Malcolm! She watched in horror as his eyes fluttered, his body limp under the strange hands. Stay with me please, and then, just then, the shadows shifted again. A loud crack echoed not from the crumbling structure, but from a darkened corner where flickering shapes danced just beyond the light. Lila froze, every instinct screaming for her to look, but something primal in her urged her to stay focused. Did you see that? She gasped, terror running cold through her veins. The stranger turned, their expression morphing into one of fierce protectiveness. What? They swept an arm to shield Malcolm and Lila, but for a moment, Lila felt the air grow heavier. With a shaking breath, she glanced back, and there it was, the outline of a figure. Tall. Silent. Its presence swallowed the fading light around it. What was watching them from within the rubble? Who lurked in the shadows of their desperation? No, the stranger whispered, eyes wide. That can't be. A deafening thunder rumbled outside as the faint growl of machinery approached. The figure vanished into the darkness, but not before Lila glimpsed a flash of familiar eyes that sent a rush of dread coiling in her stomach. They were deep, haunting, carrying stories of pain that felt insurmountable. Get down. We need to move. The stranger shouted, pulling Lila and Malcolm closer. They know we're here. Lila's heart raced, fear slicing through her as adrenaline spiked dangerously high. As she pressed against the rubble, a million questions twisted her insides. Who was the figure? Were they friend or foe? Trust me. The stranger urged, urgency dragging their words like heavy chains. With the intensity mounting, wild thoughts raced through Lila's head. She thought of Malcolm struggling to survive, of the shadows whispering despair, but just before she took a breath, the ground shook again. The figure must not be lurking above but lying in wait, intent on one thing, destruction. She clutched Malcolm tighter, eyes darting for escape as darkness encroached once more. Then, a shadow stepped forward from the gloom, and Lila was left grasping for hope in a world that felt barren. We have to go now. Lila screamed, the urgency escalating, but as she ran, a chilling thought settled deep in her gut. What if the darkness had other plans? The air around them crackled with tension, and Lila suddenly found herself torn, fight against the unknown or flee blindly into chaos? Could they escape what was coming for them? Would the light above be their savior, or had they only awakened deeper horrors? Lila felt her heart hammering in her chest as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but she couldn't abandon Malcolm. He was slipping away, and time was running out. The shadows seemed alive around them, whispering threats as they danced in the dim light. Move! The stranger urged, urgency flaring in their voice as they hoisted Malcolm's weight onto their shoulder, muscles straining with the effort. Lila stayed close, casting hurried glances back at the darkness that loomed, an ominous watcher waiting in the wings. Where do we go? She asked, words tumbling in anxiety. There's an exit at the back. We'll make it if we hurry. The stranger's determination echoed through the chaos, painfully juxtaposing Lila's spiraling fear. Could they really evade whatever lurked beyond the light? They scrambled over more debris, eyes searching frantically. But then, a low growl resonated, reverberating through the air like an ominous warning. Lila shivered, a chill creeping down her spine. It was a sound that gnawed at the edges of her sanity, raw and alive. What was that? Lila gasped, her breath hitching in her throat. Keep moving. The stranger snapped, urgency deepening in their tone, urging Lila to push ahead as they fought against the weight of despair. Lila's legs felt leaden, every step weighed down by doubt. The world around her was a blur of noise and shifting shadows, but her focus remained fixed on the shadow of Malcolm, fading fast. Just as they reached the corridor that would take them closer to the exit, she heard the growl again, closer this time. Faster. The stranger's voice pierced through the mounting panic. Lila stumbled forward, nearly tripping over herself, feeling the looming darkness breathing down her neck. Out of the corner of her eye, something shifted. The figure, that specter in the shadows, had returned. Its eyes shone, fixated on them, intent and devoid of mercy. Fear exploded inside Lila like shattering glass, cutting into her resolve. "Do you see it?" she cried, desperate for confirmation. "No. Just keep moving," the stranger urged, their grip tightening around Malcolm as they picked up the pace, urging Lila forward. They dashed through a dimly lit archway, her heart pounding against her ribs, breath raw and ragged. But they weren't out of danger yet. The figure was close. It whispered taunts that danced just beyond the fringes of her sanity, echoing her doubts. "Lila. Focus." The stranger barked, pulling her back from the edge of despair. "We can't let it win. Not now." Sweat dripped down her forehead as they reached a narrow stairwell leading to the outside. With every step, the air thickened, feeling charged with an energy that told of their impending clash. The shadows followed closely, taunting them with each breath. As they neared the top, a loud crash echoed from below. The walls trembled, cracks forming like veins signaling a heartbeat of destruction. Lila's chest tightened. How much longer until everything fell apart? Then they burst through the door into blinding daylight. Relief surged, but it was swiftly cut short. Standing in front of them was a barricade of dark shapes, the same figures she had seen, their eyes glinting like sharpened knives, faces obscured. They were waiting, predators in the wild. "Run!" the stranger shouted, urgency freezing any lingering doubt. Lila's legs propelled her forward, but just as she glanced back, she caught those haunting eyes again. They were familiar and they were fixated on her. A sense of realization washed over her, morphing fear into icy trepidation. "Wait, I know you." She gasped. The figure murmured something in a voice that felt like a ghostly echo, "You can't escape what you've awakened." What did that mean? As her mind raced, she could sense the very ground trembling beneath their feet, the chaotic backdrop of life happening behind them, unaware of the impending doom. In that moment, uncertainty reigned. Lila could feel the darkness clawing at her resolve, tugging at her soul. If she had disturbed something ancient, could they truly fight it back? "Stop!" she shouted, halting in her tracks. The world around her quieted, the air thick with an unbearable stillness. All eyes were on her, and she realized the choice weighed heavily upon her, a battle between the fear that sought to consume her or the strength hidden deep within. Could she stand her ground against the darkness? Or would it drag her under, along with Malcolm? The shadows closed in, and Lila was presented with a choice that would determine not just their fate but the fate of the looming unknown. Would she face the darkness, or would she let it swallow her whole? Lila's heart raced as she stood frozen, the weight of the world pressing down on her. The figures surrounding them, fanged and ravenous, waited like wolves poised to strike. Malcolm's pained face flashed in her mind, a desperate reminder of what was at stake. She couldn't let him die. Not here, not now. "Lila." The stranger's voice shot through the silence. They were still on the move, but she was caught in the snare of indecision. "We can't stop. Trust me." Their urgency electrified her. With a swift exhale, she forced herself to break the paralysis. She turned back to the shadows, breathing in courage like it was air. "No. I want to let you take him." The figures shifted, their whispers rising like a crescendo, mocking her defiance. "You don't understand, child. You've awakened us." The echo danced cruelly around her, battering her resolve, but Lila dug her heels in deeper. "Let him go," she shouted, adrenaline spiking her courage. For an instant, the world held its breath. The leading figure took a step forward. Shadowy limbs elongated, threatening to engulf her. "You're part of this now. You can't undo what's been set in motion." Anger surged within her, racing to the surface. She stepped into the light, casting aside fear. I want to be your pawn. With each word, she felt the tightening grip of her fate expand. The figures flinched, hesitating under the power of her conviction. You think this is a game? That you can toy with lives? You're wrong. The stranger yanked at her sleeve, their voice a panic-driven whisper. Lias, this isn't a fight we can win. We need to retreat. She glanced at Malcolm, slumped and pale. Her heart twisted. How could she abandon him? Could she leave all of them to this fate? Suddenly, Malcolm stirred. He blinked, his eyes fluttering open as if emerging from a dark fog. Lias, he murmured, voice weak but filled with trust. That flicker of faith sparked something fierce within her. This isn't over. Lias cried, redirecting her attention back to the oncoming shadows. She braced herself, determined to create an opening, daring the darkness to consume her. As if sensing her resolve, the figures surged forward with a low growl, their shapes blurring like smoke. The stranger pulled her back, desperation etched across their features. No. But she wouldn't be afraid. The ground quaked beneath their feet, sending vibrations up through her legs. In an impulsive move, she raised her arms, eyes locked on the twisted forms. I command you. Release him. Shock waves rippled through the air, resonating with an energy she didn't fully understand. The shadows stilled, momentarily caught in her bold declaration. It took every ounce of her will to hold them at bay. Why are you fighting? The leading figure hissed, disdain dripping from their words. You think you possess power? You've only just begun and then it happened. The shadows recoiled, as if struck by a sudden wind, fanning out and retreating. Lias's heart raced with hope, even as she fought to maintain her position. Malcolm! Get up! To her surprise, he pushed himself off the ground, shaky but upright. What's happening? I don't know. Just hold on. Lias shouted, straining against the pull of darkness encroaching again. Her pulse throbbed in her ears, the tension wrapping tightly around her like a noose. Each moment felt like a lifeline. The stranger moved alongside her, their gaze fierce but faltering. The darkness was not finished yet. We must go. But just as Lias thought they had gained ground, the air thickened, burning with malevolence. Fleeting child. You will regret this defiance. Your time has just begun to unravel. With those final words, the shadows surged once more, and everything spun into chaos. The ground split beneath them, and Lias fought against the pull of the abyss. Hold on to me. The stranger shouted as they darted toward a jagged crevice that had formed. Lias's footing faltered, the shadows clawing at her heels. The screams of the figures pierced the air like knives, echoing her spiraling panic. She clutched Malcolm's arm tightly, the warmth of his skin a lifeline amidst the impending doom. Go! She screamed. As they leaped through the divide, darkness swallowed the last remnants of light behind them. In an instant, everything went black. When the world righted itself, they landed in an unfamiliar place, reborn into a reality where shadows danced relentlessly around the edges. Lias looked around, heart still racing. Where were they now? Are we safe? Malcolm whispered, panic lacing his tone, but Lias could sense a stirring. The darkness lingered, lurking just beyond their reach, waiting to answer the question that haunted all their thoughts. And suddenly, the last whispers echoed back to her, reminding her that the fight was far from over. What had she awakened, and would she ever truly escape the shadows? As she stood, breathlessly scanning their surroundings, the chilling truth settled in: not all battles are fought in the open. Sometimes, the most insidious battles are the ones fought within. Would she be strong enough to face the darkness again? Or would it consume them all before she had the chance to understand what she had awakened? Lias stood in the dim light of the unfamiliar place, shadows pressing heavily against the walls. The once urgent chaos was now a haunting silence, broken only by the muted whispers of the ghosts lurking in her mind. She felt Malcolm's hand shake against her arm, the warmth now a fragile barrier against the fear creeping up inside her. "Are we safe?" he asked again, a tremor in his voice that tugged at her heart. "I don't know," she replied honestly, dread pooling in her stomach. She scanned their surroundings: bare walls, cracked floors. No way out in sight. And yet, there was something about this space that felt different, alive, as if it pulsed with history waiting to be told. Malcolm took a shaky breath, his face still pale, a reminder of all they'd survived. "I don't remember everything," he whispered. "What happened back there?" It felt like we were fighting something. The shadows flickered around them, almost as if they were listening, waiting. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "We were. We still are. But we can't back down now. Not after everything." The determination in her voice startled even her. Her thoughts raced back to the leading figure, with its voice dripping with disdain. "You've awakened us." What had she truly stirred? Lila bit her lip, a knot tightening in her throat. "We'll find a way back. Together." Just then, the shadows shifted, morphing into dark silhouettes that danced just beyond Lila and Malcolm. They twisted and turned, whispering secrets of despair and dread. The air thickened with tension, forcing Lila's instincts into overdrive. "Stay close," she urged, feeling her pulse quicken. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around her like creeping vines, threatening to pull her into a void where hope drowned. Malcolm nodded, a flicker of courage lighting his eyes. "Do you think it knows we're here?" The question sent cold tendrils crawling along her spine. She didn't want to consider the answer. "We mustn't let it control us," she said, taking a step forward. In that moment, she understood this wasn't just about survival. It was about facing the darkness within and finding strength where once there had only been fear. With every step they took, the shadows shifted. They shifted with intention, pulsating with anger, aggression, and something darker: recognition. It felt as if the very essence of the shadows reached out to ensnare them, like predators unveiling their claws. "Lila's," Malcolm's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "What if it tries to take us again?" Panic rose in her chest, but Lila held onto it tightly. "We won't let it. This time, we're standing our ground." Suddenly, out of the blackness, the leading figure materialized again, its features now stark and defining. "You think you can defy the shadows? You've awakened ancient powers, child." Lila took a step forward, her heart racing. "I'm not afraid of you. I choose to fight." The shadows whipped around her like a tempest, but she stood firm, breath steadying with conviction. "You will not take him." She pointed to Malcolm, her voice rising above the growing whispers. The figure smirked, its eyes narrowing. "The light you hold won't protect you forever. You embrace the darkness, and soon, it will choose you." "No!" Lila shouted, every ounce of her being standing up against the force of despair. "I choose to fight for hope." Malcolm stepped beside her, the weight of their combined strength causing shadows to flicker and twitch. "Together," he declared, voice unwavering. He reached for Lila's hand, their fingers interlocking with fierce determination. At that moment, light burst from their clasped hands, cascading like a wave, pushing back the shadows. The darkness began to shriek, a sound that split the air in two. Here erupted chaos. Figures roared, the deafening noise of shadows clashing against raw light. "Don't look away. Maintain the light," Lila instructed, focusing on the pulse of energy radiating through them. She felt the warmth seep into her limbs, felt Malcolm's heartbeat sync with hers. Together they formed an unyielding barrier, a conduit of hope echoing against despair. The whispers of defiance emerged again, the shadows thrashing, desperate to extinguish the light. "You think this is power? Depths you can't conceive await," the figure hissed, as the shadows contorted violently against their fight. "No more," Lila shouted, her voice mingling with the rush of light erupting around them. They pushed deeper, the shadows flailing, pressing against their newfound connection, but for every ounce of darkness, the light surged stronger. Suddenly, silence enveloped them, an uncommon stillness that filled the air and settled around Lila and Malcolm. "What just happened?" Malcolm asked, breathless. I think we're learning to take control," Lila replied, surprise flooding her voice. The darkness was still there, but it trembled instead of closing in. They had ignited a spark, a flicker of hope that could never again be snuffed out. As shadows receded, Lila realized they had awakened more than ancient powers. They had awakened themselves. "We can't stop now," she said with renewed confidence. "We've got to find our way back to the surface. We can do this." Together, hand in hand, they moved into the unknown, shadows behind them inching back like frightened children. The light pulsed within them, a blazing fire against whatever darkness lay ahead. The remnants of fear lingered, but it was replaced by something else, an unwavering belief that they could conquer whatever was thrown their way. She and Malcolm were bound to face whatever awaited them, stronger for it. It was no longer about survival, it was about living, and she wouldn't let anything take that away again. As they stepped forward, a new awareness crept over Lila. She knew they were not just entering into a battle against shadows but a journey towards discovering their true selves. And as they pushed into the light, leaving the haunting whispers behind, one thing became clear: the fight was far from over, but together, they would meet it head-on. So, what about you? If you're still with me, don't forget this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss out on the next chapter of Lila and Malcolm's journey. Smash that like button right now, it helps the algorithm way more than you think. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what happened and what comes next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Every voice counts in this journey.